Right, part two of this shamanic illness theme. Maybe I'll begin with a few lines from Mary Oliver. One day you finally knew what you had to do, and you began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble, though the old knots tugged at you. Mend my life, they cried, but you did not stop. You knew what you had to do. Got the words slightly wrong there, but it makes the point. Slowly, as you left those voices behind, there was a new voice that you began to recognize as your own, that kept you company as you stepped deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. In a way, that's what this theme's about. It's about claiming your life, claiming your own life, not just being part of something, uh, a role, which is how normal society works. It's how relationships work. Psychologically, we adopt roles. I mean, there's nothing wrong with division of labour and all the rest of it, but we are in a role, and it's stepping outside of that. And there's something very powerful that wants to claim us. It's an initiation. That's what this shamanic illness is. And I mentioned in the last episode, um, you can see it in these hard to diagnose illnesses that people get. In my mid-30s, I had a fatigue for a few years. And it wasn't, I call it fatigue rather than tiredness, because I wasn't tired in a normal sense, but I just couldn't carry on. I couldn't carry on like how I had been. And the fatigue is like the plug has been pulled. It's like there's no energy there. And I realized that I'd taken my life force as my own to use. And that's not how it is. You are used by it. We are in the service of life. Life has this plan, this blueprint, this something or other, this destiny, this fate. There's something writ for us in a gentle, living sort of way where we have choice all along. And it's about responding to that. It's about going yes to that. So I'd been very willful running these Buddhist communities according to these ideas and creating these communities and businesses and stuff like that. And I was in a sort of central position in it all. And I didn't believe in it. I was doing it to kind of prove something to myself and to the people around me. But I didn't believe in it. And after I'd been running it for a while and somehow we pulled it all together and it reached stability because it had been in a bit of a crisis, I went into a kind of meltdown in which I could do nothing unless it was like this mysterious thing called shamanism that was buzzing around in my head, or astrology as well. They both kind of spoke to me. And when I listened to that kind of inner ambrosia, that's how I felt. Instead of listening to these ideas, this Buddhist tradition and the teacher, instead of listening to something outside of myself, and I'm not saying the ideas were wrong, it was where it was coming from. Instead of listening to something outside of myself, I was listening to something within. So it's like, where are you listening? And I think that can be part of the recovery process, is learning to listen, to something deep within yourself that may not make sense from an ordinary point of view. It may be very threatening to your ordinary life and to what other people around you think. I mean, I had to leave the whole life I was in and the friends I had, and a lot of people who would be prepared to say, you've got it wrong. I had to leave all of that. It took me right through my 30s, this process, this turning about. What I was looking at changed from out there. Well, it was never entirely out there. I mean, it was Buddhism after all, but it is still too much out there. There's something within, this voice within that has its own agenda for me. And there is me, that always was me. These crises, they take you to who you always were. you'd forgotten. So you have to be initiated, reinitiated into who you are. Initiation, that's something we don't have in a formal sense in our culture. In traditional cultures, you get the thing of well, certainly with the boys, some of them, they'll get chucked out into the wilderness. They've got to survive. There's maybe certain physical scars put on them, all that sort of thing. They're taken away from the women and they're brought into the world of the men. It's time for that. And women have their own initiation when they become capable of having children and all of that. We don't have that. And sometimes people bemoan that. We haven't got initiation, so we can never discover this profound thing. We can never move on to these next stages because initiations they're moving on from one stage of life to the next. But I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. It's not the chaos shamanism way of looking at it, yeah? Because the ordinary way of looking at it is you have these forms and you have to go through these forms to come out the other side. And chaos shamanism always says form is secondary. It's finding the heart of these things and living the heart of these things. And what is the heart of initiation? The heart of initiation is something new being born in you. There isn't just a rearrangement of the old. And you need to be opened up in order for that to happen, which is why in the rituals you get put through these quite extreme circumstances. They demolish you. You don't know who you are anymore. Maybe you're in the darkness. You don't have a name anymore. You're waiting for a new name to come. All these sort of things. So that the space, the old has to die. That's what it stands for. That's what happens when you go into a sweat lodge. It's a death and a rebirth. You go in naked and you come out reborn as a new person. So these forms just point to that and they help with that maybe. But it's something that happens anyway. Life initiates us anyway, if we're open to it, if we're lucky. Because for many people, they're happy just being normal. They don't want anything outside of normal. And that's fine. That's who they are. They have their own particular path to do. If you're listening to this, there's something else going on that needs to be listened to. And it's an initiation. Life may initiate you from the outside. Yeah? You can lose all sorts of things, particularly if you're not being open in the way that the universe or spirit wants you to be, has chosen you. You may lose people close to you. They may die. You may lose your job. You may lose your health. You may lose your money. All these things can happen that are really painful. They demolish us. And, well, these things can happen anyway. But sometimes they happen for this purpose of taking us apart so that this new thing can be born. And it can be a long, slow process. And it brings us back to that health thing. People can lose their health with these hard to diagnose diseases. And I think when they're hard to diagnose, that is particularly key. It's particularly showing us, look, there's something you need to listen to. And then you may gradually, over the years, get well. I mean, even now, 30 years later, I will get twinges of this fatigue if I start pushing myself. If I have a plan about what I'm going to do, I start doing it. Yeah. Just the fact that I've got a plan, kick it in. So I'll do 10 minutes gardening and then I just can't do anymore. Not because I haven't got the capability of it, but because of the way I'm going, right, I'm going to get all of that done. And Spirit goes, no. We'll decide what you're going to get done. Not you. You just go at it in a gentle, reasonable sort of way. And we'll tell you when to stop and start. And when you're functioning from Spirit, you can keep going forever. You've got all the health you need. Yeah. So that's probably it for this one. Okay.